Beneath the unforgiving pressure of the North Sea's blackest depths, a diver's nightmare becomes a chilling race against time, a battle for survival with everything on the line. This is not fiction. It's a true story that grips the soul. The film opens with Chris sharing a quiet, intimate moment with his fiancée, Morgan, inside a cargo container, moments before his deployment. He's about to embark on a dangerous mission. His role, to install underwater pipelines nearly 1,000 feet below the ocean surface, a task as demanding as it is perilous. Soon after, Chris travels to Clipper Key, where he reunites with Duncan, crossing paths with several crew members along the way. The scene transitions to reveal the sheer scale of their operation. Towering machines and advanced equipment dominate the deck of the ship, underscoring the seriousness of the mission. We're introduced to a crew assembled for a grueling 28-day dive operation. As the men gather, Craig, their supervisor, steps forward and breaks down the mission. The divers are split into 3 units, Teams A, B, and C. Team A includes Duncan, Chris, and Dave, the trio tasked with one of the mission's most demanding roles. After Craig departs, Chris attempts to get to know his teammate, but Dave's demeanor is cold and focused. It's clear that Dave is all business, a man who keeps to himself and prefers to stay laser-focused on the job rather than engage in idle talk. After Chris steps away, Duncan turns to Dave with a few words of praise for him, recalling the solid teamwork he and Chris shared on past assignments. The mood remains professional but carries a hint of camaraderie. Soon after, all diving teams are directed to move into their designated hyperbaric chambers. Inside Team A's chamber, Duncan, Chris, and Dave settle in. Chris gently places a small photo of Morgan near his sleeping area, a quiet reminder of the life he's temporarily left behind. Dave, ever the pragmatist, questions the photo and suggests Chris keep his mind on the mission. Duncan, sensing the tension, offers some perspective. That's just how Dave is, focused and to the point. With everyone in place, Craig makes an announcement. The chambers are about to be sealed. One by one, each team confirms their readiness. The heavy chamber doors close with a resounding finality, locking the divers into their pressurized environments. Craig oversees the operation from the control room, monitoring their vitals and environment through CCTV feeds and staying in contact via the comm system. As the vessel begins its journey into the open sea, we're given a glimpse into the divers' new routine. Structured days filled with physical exercise, downtime, and communal meals. During one of these meals, Duncan shares a surprising revelation. This mission will be his last. After 2 decades in the field, he's hanging up his gear. The news takes Chris and Dave by surprise, sparking a moment of reflection among the team. Meanwhile, Chris continues to stay emotionally connected to Morgan, checking updates and messages about her day whenever he can. A small but meaningful link to the world above. Later on, a powerful storm hits the sea, making conditions dangerous for everyone on board. Despite the rough weather, the divers are still expected to do their job. Inside the control room, the crew discusses the storm and decides that Team A needs to dive near the manifold. Craig goes to wake up Team A, Chris, Duncan, and Dave, in the middle of the night. He tells them to leave their chamber and get ready for the dive. The team gathers their gear, picking up essentials like knives and compasses, and heads to the diving bell. As they prepare, Dave tells Chris to stick close and follow his lead. It's clear Dave doesn't fully trust Chris's abilities yet. Once Team A is inside the bell, the hatch is sealed shut. The bell is lifted out of the chamber and lowered into the raging sea. It shakes and jerks as it's lowered into the water, the start of their tough mission beneath the stormy waves. What challenges await them in the depths of the North Sea? Can they survive and complete their task? Let's find out what happens next. In the middle of the rough sea, the diving bell stops at about 300 feet deep. Duncan opens the hatch and keeps the water temperature steady while getting the team ready to dive. Dave is the first to go. Wearing his oxygen tanks and helmet, he jumps into the water and contacts the control room. Chris follows right after. Both divers make their way down to the ocean floor, carrying a connector. Their job is to attach it to the manifold. They manage to do it successfully, and the manifold powers up, lighting up the area around them. As Dave and Chris get inside the manifold and start their work, trouble begins above. In the control room, warning lights flash and alarms go off. Something is wrong. The ship's thrusters suddenly stop working, and the team scrambles to fix the issue. Meanwhile, Dave notices the ship is drifting off course. He tells Chris to get out of the manifold immediately. They quickly climb to the top of the structure and inform the control room of what's happening. But as Chris tries to move up further, his umbilical cord, which provides air and communication, gets stuck. The ship is being thrown around by the storm, and Chris's line gets stuck in the manifold's connector. He tries to pull it free, but that causes the connector to come loose, shutting off the power and leaving everything in total darkness. Inside the diving bell, Duncan hands out more umbilical cords, but they're running low. Chris is stuck. He can't move up or down. He's trapped, and both the team in the control room and the divers are filled with worry. Chris's cord gets tighter, making it hard for him to breathe. Dave tells him to switch to his backup oxygen system, the bailout system. Chris does, but now he has only 10 minutes of air left in his tanks. The control room realizes how serious things have become. Dave promises Chris that he'll come back for him, but for now, Chris needs to stay on top of the manifold. If he moves, Dave might not be able to find him in the dark, stormy sea. Dave keeps talking to Chris, guiding him. Suddenly, a strong wave hits the ship, causing it to jerk violently. Chris's cord tightens until it finally snaps, and he's thrown away from the manifold. At the same time, Dave is pulled back up toward the bell. Chris is now completely disconnected. Back in the bell, Duncan tries to pull up Chris's line, but it's broken. He realizes something's gone very wrong. Dave gets back inside and tells Duncan what happened to Chris. Everyone is deeply concerned. Chris is alone, lost in the sea. Inside the control room, Craig is filled with worry, anxiously discussing the diver's situation with the ship's captain. They're desperately searching for a solution to bring Chris back safely. Out in the ocean depths, Chris has less than 8 minutes of air remaining. Surrounded by darkness, Chris strikes a flare, its glow barely cutting through the murky water. Disoriented and panicked, he shouts for Duncan and Dave, hoping for any sign of them. His compass is no longer working, leaving him without direction. With only the flare to guide him, he scans the water, trying to locate the manifold, the only way back, just as Dave had instructed. Back on the bridge, the captain turns to Officer Hannah, urging her to help steer the ship toward Chris's location. She hesitates, fearing the storm's brutal force could endanger everyone aboard. Still realizing the stakes, she agrees, and the two begin carefully maneuvering the vessel through the chaos. Time is running out. Chris is down to less than 4 minutes of oxygen when he finally spots the manifold in the distance. But the fight isn't over yet. He must climb it to survive. With lungs burning and every breath a struggle, Chris starts his ascent. The crushing pressure of the deep sea weighs on him, and fear creeps in. Fear that this may be his final dive. But he refuses to surrender. Driven by sheer will, he pushes forward, reaching out, clawing his way up. Despite the exhaustion, despite the pain, Chris climbs once more. And finally, against all odds, he reaches the top of the manifold. Exhausted and barely clinging to life, Chris lies motionless atop the manifold. In his mind, the image of Morgan appears, her smile, her voice, the moments they shared. At the same time, far from the sea, Morgan sits alone, filled with worry, longing for his safe return. Her fear is real, knowing the danger Chris faces deep beneath the waves. Chris's strength fades, his breathing slows, and hope slips away. Though he made it to the top, a feat of sheer determination, his oxygen has run out. As the darkness closes in around him, his eyes gently shut. The deep sea, cold and silent, surrounds him. Back in the diving bell, Duncan and Dave grow more anxious by the second, fearing the worst. In the control room, Craig's face shows the weight of responsibility, his concern for Chris written all over it. Hannah and the captain continue to battle the storm, doing everything they can to stabilize the ship. Desperate to find Chris, Craig orders the launch of the ROV, a remotely operated underwater vehicle. As the camera feed comes into view, it shows Chris lying still on the manifold. His hands twitch slightly, but his eyes remain closed. There's no sign he's breathing. Craig instructs Andrew, the ROV pilot, to try and retrieve him, but Andrew hesitates. The ROV, he says, isn't designed to save the living, only to recover the dead. With no other option left, Craig takes full responsibility and decides to rescue Chris himself. His determination to save his divers shows just how much he cares as a leader. Taking control of the ROV, Craig carefully guides it toward Chris, trying to grab hold of him. It's not easy. Chris is unconscious but somehow still alive, even though he hasn't had oxygen for over 16 minutes. Craig struggles to get a proper grip on him, but finally he manages to catch the strap on Chris's gear. As he begins to pull Chris up, he realizes the strap is stuck in the broken parts of the manifold. Inside the diving bell, Duncan tells Dave a heartbreaking story. 2 divers once died in a similar situation, and one of their bodies was never recovered. He gets emotional, saying he doesn't want Morgan to be left with just Chris's shoe as a memory. Back in the control room, the dynamic positioning officer, DPO, restores the thruster connection, which also brings back communication with the diving bell. Craig quickly tells Duncan and Dave where Chris is. Dave gets ready for another dive to go after Chris. Duncan is torn. He's worried about Chris, but also afraid of sending Dave out into danger. Still, Dave suits up and gets clearance from the control room to dive safely into the sea once more. Craig keeps a close eye on Chris through the ROV feed. Chris is still unconscious, but miraculously, he's alive. Down in the deep, Dave reaches him at the manifold and quickly unlocks the strap that was holding Chris down. He fastens Chris to his own umbilical line and starts the difficult climb back to the bell. The storm continues to rock the ship, and carrying Chris's weight isn't easy, but Dave pushes through. Step by step, he hauls Chris back. Finally, they reach the bell, where Duncan pulls Chris inside, removes his helmet, and immediately begins trying to revive him. Chris is pale, cold, and has been without oxygen for over 28 minutes. He's not breathing. Duncan desperately gives him first aid, even sharing his own breath, but Chris shows no signs of life. Time seems to stop. Then just when it feels like all hope is gone, Chris suddenly gasps for air. Duncan quickly lifts him up and helps him sit. Dave returns to the bell as Craig and the control room get the message. Chris is breathing, but he's still unconscious. Duncan and Dave talk to him, try to wake him, try to get a response, but Chris stays silent and motionless. Their hope begins to fade, believing they may have saved his body, but lost the man inside. Then in a quiet moment, Chris turns his head, looks at Dave, and starts to speak. Relief and joy fill the bell. Duncan and Dave rush to him, overwhelmed, knowing Chris has made it back. In the control room, Craig is filled with joy and relief, knowing that Chris has survived and is now awake. The entire team celebrates, and even the other diving teams in their chambers join in the happiness. Chris, still recovering, is confused by everyone's emotional reactions. He doesn't yet realize just how close he came to dying. Craig praises the captain for handling the storm so well, and the rest of the team also shares their thanks. Craig then informs Team A that they'll be heading back to the surface chamber soon. From my point of view, this moment shows the power of strong leadership. If Craig hadn't taken the risk and made the decision to save Chris, he might not have made it out alive. Later, we see Chris resting inside the chamber. Dave stays by his side, taking care of him. Chris finds out he was unconscious for 40 minutes before being rescued. He feels guilty for making Morgan worry, especially since he had promised her he would be safe. Dave eventually leaves Chris to get some rest. Alone, he looks at photos of his daughters and becomes emotional, clearly affected by everything that happened. Chris continues his recovery inside the chamber, going through the slow process of decompression, thankful to be alive. During his recovery, Chris checks in with Morgan to let her know he's okay, but he doesn't tell her the truth about what happened. Instead, he makes up a story about a small issue with the ship, wanting to spare her the stress and fear of what he went through. As the days pass, it's time for 4 of the divers to be released. The chamber doors open, and the team step out. Duncan says goodbye to Chris, then heads back into the chamber, joking that he forgot his pillow. In reality, he just wants to spend a little more time in the place that marked his final dive. Craig recognizes this and sincerely thanks Duncan for his years of service. Soon after, Chris is reunited with Morgan. This time, he tells her everything. She's shaken by the story, but Chris comforts her, promising that no matter what happens, he'll always make it back to her. The two then head home together, ready to start a new chapter. Amazingly, despite being without oxygen for 29 minutes, Chris suffers no long-term physical or mental damage. Experts believe a mix of the extreme depth and cold temperature might have played a role in preserving him, but even now, no one can fully explain how he survived. To many, including me, it was nothing short of a miracle. After the incident, Chris and Morgan get married and begin their life together. Just 3 weeks later, Chris, Duncan, and Dave return to the North Sea to finish the mission they had started, bringing this incredible real-life story to a close. If you enjoyed this gripping true story of survival, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more intense, real-life stories and powerful survival films.